Let's get started with Craig Moffett and bring him in here to talk on the real world as we know it. Craig, here's David Rosenberg publishing moments ago, and it's just a single sentence. Cash flow is king. You're the king. Your group is the king of cash flow. Is there a sea change in the managements in media? Are they going to distribute more cash flow?
Certainly in the cable operators they are. The cable operators have, for the last really a year now, the cable operators have been much better at returning cash to shareholders. And it's exactly what their investors have asked for all along. So longtime cable investors went, 10 years waiting for the promise of cash return to be realized. It's finally been realized.
What is the revenue growth of the cable operators now? Is it nominal GDP? Is it half that?
It's still a little better than nominal GDP, actually. The cable operators are typically growing in the 4% range, a little bit less than mid-single digits, but still solid growers. You know, remember, the cable operators are not media companies. The cable operators are infrastructure companies, and they benefit from the digital transition as much as anybody. It's their infrastructure that delivers the bits and bytes into the home.
Does CBS deliver the same cash flow day to day that a Comcast does?
Well, I'll steer clear of the media companies and stick to the distribution side. But I think this is a period when even the traditional media companies on the content side are also getting more serious about returning cash to shareholders.
This chart is great. I love this chart. Talk about a 10-year vacuum. Let's bring up dreaded first chart right now as we look at somebody's living room fancier TV than me. I have the black and white TV with the rabbit ears, Craig. This cash flow is different. Look at the run in Comcast. Shareholders love this sea change, don't they?
They do. Comcast is up around a 52-week high again this morning, and we're going into Comcast earnings here. But my suspicion is that these are companies that are relatively predictable, so there aren't a lot of surprises in what you get out of cable companies. And they're in a sweet spot right now. They're winning the broadband wars. Broadband is increasingly the flagship product, not the video distribution business.
Right.
And they've got a big advantage there, and I think you're going to see this last for a while.
And I want to talk about this later, but the heart of the matter is we're still watching TV. I mean, when everything's said and done, the fact is we pick up the thing and we go like this, don't we?
5 hours a day for the average American. 5 hours a day.
That's only 2 Stanley Cup games.
That's right.
That's what Madison Square Garden. Let's look at it here. Lundqvist, the Flyers. Was this great this weekend in hockey? Good noon to all of you around the world that think I'm nuts. You can't make money in Lundqvist. Okay, this is the goalie for the New York Rangers. And if you want to option a piece of him, like his right leg pad, do you buy Madison Square Garden after this run?
Well, that run actually started, I don't know whether it's Lundqvist or Jeremy Lin, but that run actually started with Jeremy Lin and a retransmission dispute with none other than Time Warner Cable here in New York. And regional sports nets, and that's really what Madison Square Garden is. It's a venue, it's some teams, but really Madison Square Garden is regional sports nets. And regional sports nets have been taking price in this market for a long time now. And in fact, it's one of the fundamental strategic questions for pay TV is how do we support the run-up in the price of pay TV sports? Right.
When you look at the whole battle here for eyeballs, I want to talk about Netflix and Viacom in a bit. I mentioned earlier creative destruction. Where's the most destruction in your space right now?
Well, I think it's really on the communications side.
Verizon, Sprint, and all that.
The wireless operators are. We're traditionally in this world where you think about Verizon competing with AT&T, competing with Sprint, competing with T-Mobile. All of them are competing with Apple. And it is Apple and maybe down the road it's Facebook that are creating new ways of communicating at relatively low price with relatively low bandwidth. That is starting to erode the revenue model of the traditional carriers.
I was forced at gunpoint by children to do FaceTime last night. That's just an end around the wireless, isn't it?
Well, it's an end around the wireless pricing in a sense, in that when you switch traffic toward things like FaceTime and or whether it's the free chat services instead of using the SMS texting.
Right.
You're arbitraging the price model because you're simply doing what are traditionally delivered over relatively low bandwidth, high price transmissions like voice and text, and you're doing them over high bandwidth, low price models over the data subscription. And it's tough for the carriers to make money in that way.
Right. Well, let's come back. Craig Moffett with us as we talk the video wars. Let's bring up a research note here from Mr. Moffett, writing up a storm. Here we go. There it is. Everything is old, is new again. Video subscriber losses were getting better, but phones threatened to go into decline. We're back to the old pattern of, say, 2006. I like that. What do you mean with Time Warner?
Well, Time Warner Cable is really sort of the pure play cable operator in the U.S. And there's been, behind the run in the cable stocks that we just saw in the Comcast chart in the last segment, is the belief that video trends are getting better. It certainly seem to be at Comcast, and it's a result of reaching some equilibrium with competitors, so the share losses are slowing down, and at least the hope that we start to see a little bit of new household formation in the U.S., which puts a tailwind behind all of these guys.
Are we cutting cables? Are we cutting the cord, as you guys say?
Not really. It makes a great story to say that people are disconnecting in favor of Netflix and Hulu and things like that. The evidence doesn't really support that. We're seeing a weakness in new household formation, and without new household formation, there's not any new homes to serve. But it doesn't look like we're seeing any material amount of cord cutting.
Walked by your headquarters over in 6th Avenue today. I tried to explain to someone this weekend, that there's these Sanford Bernstein black books, and then there's little research reports that really sneak up on you. Carlos Kirchner, Todd Yinger on the collapse of Nickelodeon. No other way to put it. Look at the chart, folks. And you can see Netflix, even with, it's an elegant chart, Netflix, even with a monumental 2011 screw up, just Viacom has a dead pulse. Why?
Well, so here's the thing, and I think you can, in some ways, capture the entire story of what's going on in media in this microcosm of Netflix and Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon dominated children's ratings forever. In fact, it was the top-rated cable network for a long time. And it has started to fall off a cliff. Initially, Viacom suggested that it was a function of just bad measurement. My colleagues Carlos Kirchner and Todd Yinger just published a piece last week based on a very interesting proprietary data set of where they segmented viewers who have Netflix and who don't, and found that what's going on is Netflix, that people who subscribe to Netflix are really shifting their viewing patterns dramatically away from syndicated children's television, at least in real time, and shifting it to the video on demand platforms like Netflix, and that's a very big deal.
And you say it's such a big deal that they're going to have to act and pull their copyright back from Netflix.
That's the most interesting part of that. My colleagues Todd and Carlos argue that the inevitable outcome is that the media companies will simply pull their content back from these alternative distribution, because as they put it, first and foremost, there is the doctrine that says you do no harm to the core business. That is, you do no harm to the existing cable pay TV model.
How will consumers react? The first thing I thought was there would be massive consumerism. It's almost like Dire Straits. I want my MTV, no pun to Viacom. I want my Netflix. Doesn't sound musical, but there it is.
See, I think this is a little more complicated. Lots of people have said for a long time that just because consumers would rather get individual channels, they'd rather get them a la carte, they want everything on demand, they want it all streamed, only what they want to pay for, all those good things, that inevitably is the way the world's going to evolve. We've always said, wait a second, not so fast. It may be the way consumers want it, and it may be the way technologists want it, but the media companies have a say here.
They own the copyright.
They own the copyright. The media companies have a very, very powerful say in this, and there is no way that they are going to voluntarily unbundle themselves.
I want to show you a Mark Mahaney chart we'll use later in the show. Let's do this twice through the show. It's a comparison of Amazon to Google, which is not Craig Moffett's space. But there it is, the initial Google surge, and I'm sorry, it's been a 4-year glide path of retail over search. I mean, when you look at the digital revolution that you deal with every day, that Todd deals with every day, that Mahaney over the Citigroup, I mean, we're being consumed by digital on every front. Where are we going to be in 5 years? How do you perceive we will consume entertainment?
Well, I suspect that at least in the pay TV universe, things won't change quite as quickly as people think. But again, it's one of the reasons why I've always said if you want to take refuge anywhere in the pay TV space, it may sound counterintuitive, but you take it in the cable operators. And the reason the cable operators are so well insulated is, again, what I said before. The cable operators are not media companies. They're infrastructure providers. They're going to win either way, because at the end of the day, it is their infrastructure that delivers the bits and bytes. I do think that investors in general have to shorten their time horizons, and they are, because they recognize that the digital models, whether it's Google or whether it's even Apple to an extent, it's very hard to project where they're going to be in 5 years, and therefore the more vulnerable models tend to be the ones that are the most susceptible with the least infrastructure.
Craig, thank you so much.